in the heart of Richmond, Virginia. Inside a wood-paneled courtroom, lined with rows of tense spectators, a heated custody battle was reaching its boiling point. The buzz of whispered conversations dulled into silence as Judge Marianne Kessler adjusted her glasses and tapped her gavel lightly. The case between Rachel Dorsey and her ex-husband, Marcus Holly, had already dragged on for months. Allegations flew from both sides: emotional neglect, unstable housing, suspicious boyfriends, and bitter accusations. Lurking quietly near the courtroom exit, Officer Ramirez stood with Duke, a 5-year-old German shepherd with a history of specialized training in detection and security. Duke had been assigned to courthouse duty for the past year, his presence calming to some, intimidating to others. Most barely noticed him anymore. He was just another fixture in the scenery, silent and motionless, unless called to action. But Duke was anything but passive. His ears twitched as people entered. His nose flared subtly as each person passed. He remembered scents, behaviors, and expressions. In the front row of the courtroom, nestled beside her mother, sat 3-year-old Lily Howell. Her feet barely touched the floor, and her tiny hands clutched a well-worn teddy bear dressed in a red shirt. Lily didn't fidget or cry. She didn't speak or whine. She simply stared, her wide, innocent eyes darting from her mother to the judge, then to the big dog near the door. She blinked a few times. Then she pointed. No one noticed at first. The adults were too caught up in their own narratives. Rachel Dorsey was nervously twirling a strand of her auburn hair. Marcus sat rigid in his chair, jaw clenched, eyes locked forward. But Lily, unbothered by the weight of the proceedings, raised her small arm and extended her finger again, this time more firmly. "That dog is bad," she said softly. A few heads turned. "What did she say?" someone whispered. "I think she said bad dog," another voice murmured. Judge Kessler leaned slightly forward. "Excuse me?" The bailiff took a step forward, unsure whether to intervene. Lily, undeterred, looked straight at Duke and repeated louder, "Bad dog." A wave of confusion swept over the room. Officer Ramirez shifted, glancing at Duke, who remained poised but suddenly tense. The judge tapped her gavel again. Silence. "In the court," she said, though her voice lacked its usual authority. Her eyes narrowed at the little girl. Rachel leaned toward her daughter, whispering urgently, "Lily, stop it. He's just a police dog." But Lily wasn't frightened. She wasn't screaming or crying. She was watching the dog with intense, cautious recognition. Judge Kessler raised a hand. "I'm ordering a 10-minute recess. Bailiff, please escort the mother and child to a private chamber. I want a court-appointed child advocate brought in immediately." Protests erupted from the mother's attorney. "Your Honor, this is highly irregular." "Irregular," the judge snapped, "is a child pointing at a law enforcement dog in open court and calling it bad twice. I want to know why." The room stirred with murmurs as people stood to stretch. Duke remained by Ramirez's side, eyes locked on Lily as she was gently led away. In the small adjoining room, Lily was seated on a cushioned bench. A social worker named Beth was called in, one of the court's most experienced child advocates. She knelt beside Lily and smiled warmly. "Hi there, sweetie. I'm Beth. Can I ask you a few questions?" Lily nodded, still clutching her teddy. Beth glanced at Rachel, who stood hovering, clearly agitated. "I'd like to speak with Lily alone for just a moment," Rachel protested. "She's just tired. She didn't mean anything." The bailiff intervened. "Ma'am, please wait outside." With Rachel reluctantly gone, Beth turned back to Lily. "You said something about the dog. Can you tell me why you said he's bad?" Lily tilted her head, brows scrunched in concentration. "He was with the man." Beth's pen paused mid-scratch. "What man?" Lily pointed again, this time toward the door. The man who hurt Bear. Beth's heart skipped. Bear? Your teddy bear? No, Bear was watching when he got hurt. You mean the dog? Lily nodded. Beth's skin prickled. She reached into her case and pulled out a printed sheet of photos people involved in the custody case. Lily's eyes scanned them, then landed on one photo. Her finger tapped it slowly. That man, she whispered. Beth's eyes widened. The man in the photo was Rachel Dorsey's current boyfriend, Alan Briggs. He'd been cleared early in the case after denying involvement in any misconduct. There'd never been enough to link him to anything. Until now. Beth stood and requested to speak with the judge immediately. Back in the courtroom, Duke shifted. Again, Officer Ramirez noticed. Duke rarely moved unless something was wrong. As Beth entered and whispered into Judge Kessler's ear, the judge's expression changed. She motioned to the court clerk. We will resume shortly, she said. But we'll be taking this hearing in a new direction. Everyone in the courtroom sensed that something big had shifted. And it all started with a toddler, a pointed finger, and two small words. Bad dog. Judge Kessler took a deep breath. Her years on the bench had taught her to trust gut instincts, and this was no ordinary courtroom disruption. She asked for Duke's records to be retrieved and ordered a background check on Alan Briggs. Ramirez, now curious, checked Duke's body language. The dog's eyes remained alert, his posture tense but disciplined. Duke had reacted to something, or someone. Outside the courtroom, Lily drew pictures with Beth scribbles of dogs, dark rooms, and sad faces. Her teddy bear lay beside her, no longer clutched, as if she no longer needed it to feel brave. The case had taken a sharp turn, and every adult in that courthouse now understood one thing. The smallest witness had just changed everything. Judge Marianne Kessler sat quietly at the bench, her gavel resting beside a thick stack of papers. The court clerk whispered something into her ear, then handed her a file containing Duke's service record and a quick preliminary report on Alan Briggs. The judge's sharp eyes scanned the pages. A sealed report, flagged by Officer Ramirez, stood out. 2 years ago, Duke had attacked Briggs during a traffic stop connected to a missing child case. At the time, the charges were dropped due to lack of evidence, and the incident had been sealed until now. Now, the same man was dating Rachel Dorsey, and her child had just made a chilling connection between him and the canine. The judge ordered the courtroom cleared of the public. Only the key parties remained. The parents, the lawyers, Officer Ramirez with Duke, and a forensic psychologist who'd just been brought in. What had started as a custody dispute was beginning to look like something far more serious. Back in the private room, Lily was drawing again, this time more focused, more vivid. Beth, the child advocate, watched as the little girl scribbled a black dog beside a shadowy figure. He made the dog mad, Lily whispered. He said if I told, the dog would bite me. Beth knelt gently beside her. Did that man ever take you somewhere away from home? Lily nodded, her eyes wide. To the red room. It smelled like smoke. Bear didn't like it. Beth's hands trembled as she typed notes into her tablet. Every word from Lily painted a deeper, darker picture. She excused herself and walked straight to the judge's chambers, where a law enforcement liaison was already reviewing Duke's old reports. Beth's testimony added weight to the growing suspicion. Alan Briggs hadn't just hurt Lily's sense of safety. He might be involved in something criminal. The judge recalled Officer Ramirez and Duke to the stand. This time, it wasn't procedural. Officer, when you saw Mr. Briggs enter this courtroom, did Duke exhibit any signs of alertness? Yes, Your Honor, Ramirez said firmly. He stiffened immediately. His gaze locked on Mr. Briggs and stayed fixed. Duke only reacts like that when he recognizes a threat. And you mentioned an incident from 2 years ago? Ramirez nodded. During a child endangerment investigation, Briggs was a suspect. Duke attacked him without being commanded. Highly unusual. But there wasn't enough evidence, and Briggs walked. The judge folded her hands. Well, he just walked into my courtroom again. This time, we're not walking away from it. She ordered Alan Briggs to be detained for questioning. His attorney immediately protested, calling it circumstantial. This is based on a child's memory and a dog's reaction? It's preposterous. No, the judge said coldly. What's preposterous is ignoring a potential predator. Hiding in plain sight. The courtroom buzzed again. Briggs was escorted out, cuffed and silent. As he passed Lily, Duke growled softly, just once. That sound, low and steady, made the entire room go still. Rachel Dorsey paled. This is a mistake, she muttered. Alan would never hurt Lily. But her voice lacked conviction. Photos, timelines, and evidence began surfacing, inconsistencies in her stories, gaps in custody exchanges, and strange deposits into her account. Investigators quietly took her phone. The data would take time to analyze, but suspicion had officially shifted. Outside the courthouse, news vans began arriving. Word had leaked. Child identifies suspect with help from police dog. Headlines ran wild. Social media exploded. Inside, however, everything was moving in slow, deliberate steps. Forensics experts began tracking down Alan Briggs' previous residences and contacts. Meanwhile, Lily sat on the floor in the advocate's room, building towers with blocks. Her world had changed, but she remained calm. Beth asked her why she wasn't scared. Because the dog is here, Lily replied, smiling. He remembers too. Back in chambers, the judge met privately with Marcus Holly. She explained what was happening and what could come next. Marcus, overwhelmed, struggled to process it all. He had always sensed something was off, but no one listened. Now his daughter had done what a room full of adults hadn't. The judge said, if what we suspect is true, this case goes far beyond custody. But your daughter, she may have saved herself. Maybe even others. Later that afternoon, the FBI arrived. Agents took over the investigation, reviewing the sealed report and Lily's testimony. Duke's prior alert was added to the new file. Alan Briggs had crossed jurisdictions before. He was on their radar, but they never had a witness brave enough to speak. Until now. Lily sat on a carpeted floor beneath a bright window inside the courthouse's child advocacy room. Outside the window, clouds drifted slowly across the Virginia sky, but inside, the tension was thick. Beth, the court-appointed child advocate, watched as Lily moved her teddy bear across a piece of paper. Her small hand clutched a red crayon, circling the outline of a strange room. It had no windows, only a door and a strange box in the corner. The figure next to the door had a long shadow. He said I couldn't talk, Lily whispered, eyes focused on the page. Beth leaned in. Who said that, sweetie? Lily hesitated. Then she pointed again to the photo Beth had shown her earlier. Alan Briggs. He told me to be quiet or the dog would come back, Lily said. Beth's stomach turned. There was no mistaking the fear in the girl's voice. Her drawings had grown more detailed with each session. Ropes, loud noises, and a cold floor. What started as a simple drawing activity was now shaping into a visual testimony. Elsewhere in the building, FBI agent Dana Rourke had arrived. She met privately with Judge Kessler, Officer Ramirez, and a lead investigator from local law enforcement. They pulled out Duke's past incident report from the child endangerment case 2 years prior and compared the details to what Lily had just described. The room went quiet. The earlier case involved a red-painted basement with chains mounted into the concrete floor, the same location where Duke had gone off-script and attacked Briggs. At the time, nothing solid connected Briggs to the crime. The child had been too afraid to speak. No charges stuck. Briggs vanished from the radar. Until now. "I want every file on Briggs reopened," Rourke said. "Digital records, phone data, aliases, everything. He's done this before." Meanwhile, Rachel Dorsey sat inside a holding room, her face blank. She claimed ignorance. Said she had no idea about Briggs's past. But her phone history was already raising red flags. Deleted messages. Hidden folders. One disturbing image recovered in her gallery appeared to be taken from inside the red room Lily described. Detectives suspected Rachel knew more than she let on. Whether she participated or turned a blind eye, her silence had nearly cost her daughter everything. Later that evening, officers raided Briggs's residence. It was a quiet, single-story home in a wooded part of Enrico County. From the outside, it looked normal. White siding, a trimmed yard, and a pickup truck in the drive. Inside, it told a different story. In the basement, officers discovered a padlocked door. Behind it was a hidden room with thick red walls, rubber matting, and a mounted camera. Children's shoes were in a corner. A stuffed animal lay under a shelf. Investigators froze. It was exactly as Lily had drawn it. A specialized forensic unit was called in. They collected fingerprints, hair samples, camera drives, and more. Alan Briggs was no longer just a suspect in a custody case. He was the target of a multi-jurisdictional child exploitation investigation. Back at the courthouse, Agent Rourke met again with Lily, this time with a therapist present. Rourke brought a box of photos, toys, furniture, rugs. Lily identified several items from the red room with chilling accuracy. When shown the camera rig, she looked down and said quietly, "That made the red light." Rourke kept her voice steady. "Did he ever hurt you, Lily?" Lily hesitated, then nodded. "He said I couldn't tell. But the dog was there." "You mean Duke?" "No, the bad dog. He used one to scare me." Rourke blinked. This was new. They began to investigate the possibility of another animal used during coercion or trauma. Every new word from Lily added another piece to the puzzle and strengthened the case against Briggs. In a secure interview room across the street, Alan Briggs remained silent. His lawyer advised him not to speak. But the forensic evidence was stacking high. Metadata from the video drives matched timestamps from Briggs's travel logs. His phone had pinged towers near homes where children had later reported abuse. And now, a brave 3-year-old had drawn the room where it all happened in terrifying detail. In a hallway, Officer Ramirez leaned against the wall beside Duke, who sat obediently. Several officers passed by and nodded in respect. Ramirez looked down at his partner and whispered, "You knew. You always knew." Duke didn't move, but his tail thumped once against the tile. The media frenzy outside the courthouse reached a peak. "Toddler's words trigger federal child abuse case," one headline read. Another claimed, "K-9 unit uncovers predator in the courtroom." Yet inside, the most remarkable thing was the calmness of Lily herself. She played. She rested. She asked for juice. Children didn't always understand the magnitude of their bravery. The judge took it all in with weary eyes. She had seen many things in her career: fraud, violence, betrayal, but never a case cracked open by a child's quiet voice and a dog's unshakable memory. Marcus Halle was called into her chambers again. This time she told him directly, "You may have your daughter permanently, but this isn't over. There may be others. You need to keep her safe." He nodded, barely holding back tears. That night, While Lily slept in a secure foster home under protective custody, law enforcement issued warrants across 3 counties. Photos recovered from Briggs's devices showed unknown children. Investigators suspected a larger ring. Task forces were formed. Names and addresses were matched. But none of it would have happened, not without 2 things: a child who remembered, and a dog who never forgot. Agents moved fast. In less than 24 hours after the basement raid, forensic teams connected the seized video files to IP logs used on dark web forums. Most of the videos had been encrypted, but not all. Faces, timestamps, and GPS data began forming. A disturbing map, and it extended far beyond Virginia. The FBI's Crimes Against Children Division assembled a multi-agency task force. Lily's drawings had not only exposed a predator, they'd torn a hole through a nationwide ring hiding behind fake addresses, shell identities, and encrypted servers. Alan Briggs wasn't acting alone. He was one of many. At a federal briefing, Agent Rourke stood before a wall of monitors. The room was quiet. This ring is highly structured. They operate in cells, some trade material, others acquire new victims. Briggs ran a feeder house, likely recruited through court, disputes and foster contacts. Photos from Briggs's phone backed it up. One showed Rachel Dorsey at a park, chatting with another mother. Another showed her sitting on a playground bench, with her arm around a child who was not Lily. That mother, when tracked down, had no idea her son had been photographed, or that a hidden camera had been placed near her car. Rachel's interrogation turned. Faced with a mountain of evidence, she broke. In exchange for reduced sentencing, she gave them names, drop points, and login credentials. She had helped Briggs lure other parents and single mothers, women in recovery, and young foster teens. I didn't know what they'd do with the kids, she claimed. But her knowledge of locations and passwords told a different story. Meanwhile, Lily remained in protective care. Marcus Hawley visited her every day. Slowly, she was beginning to smile again, playing with toys, telling stories. But every now and then, when a door creaked too loud or someone entered the room quickly, she froze. Trauma lingered in her tiny shoulders. Officer Ramirez also stopped by with Duke. Lily lit up whenever the dog appeared. She would stroke his fur and whisper, "Good boy." Ramirez could hardly believe how calm Duke remained around her, as if he knew she was the reason the truth had surfaced. The media storm refused to quiet. Protesters gathered outside the courthouse, demanding tougher sentencing. Parents began checking school pickups more closely. Missing child reports from surrounding counties were reopened and re-examined. People wanted answers. They wanted justice. Then came the twist no one expected. One of the IP addresses traced from Briggs's network led to a laptop inside a judge's home, a family court judge in Maryland. When agents arrived, they found the device wiped clean, the hard drive removed. But remnants in the router's history showed the laptop had uploaded 5 specific files matching content found in Briggs's red room. It was a bombshell. The judge, under mounting scrutiny, turned himself in within 48 hours. He claimed his credentials had been stolen, but Rachel had already named him. She'd even described a distinctive ring he wore, the same one seen in a blurred frame from a video. Suddenly, the case wasn't just about one predator. It was about systemic failure, and perhaps complicity. Judge Kessler, horrified by the discovery, wrote a private memo to the Chief Justice and FBI. "We are no longer dealing with individual evil," she wrote. "This is organized rot, and we must burn out the roots." More arrests followed. A foster coordinator in North Carolina, a pediatric nurse in Ohio, a tech support contractor in New Jersey who had written code for hiding files inside Image. thumbnails. The ring was vast, and it was breaking apart. Back in Virginia, Marcus Halle began preparing for a custody hearing. Though Rachel had waived her rights and was under federal custody, the court required formal guardianship transfer. It would be the first time Lily would stand in court since her original outburst. She wore a soft blue dress and held her bear. Close, Marcus held her other hand. Judge Kessler presided, her expression calm but emotional. She looked down at Lily and asked gently, "Do you want to live with your father?" Lily nodded. "Yes, he keeps me safe." The judge smiled and banged the gavel. "Then that's where you'll stay." Cheers broke out quietly in the gallery. Marcus knelt to hug his daughter, tears falling down his cheeks. Outside the courtroom, reporters waited. Marcus chose not to speak. He lifted Lily into his arms, wrapped her in a soft blanket, and walked straight through the flashing cameras without a word. But Duke got the last say. The K9, standing at attention beside Ramirez, barked once, loud and clear, as they passed, a symbolic note of closure and warning. By week's end, national outlets were reporting on the story. One anchor said, "It took the courage of a toddler and the instincts of a dog to bring an entire child predator network crashing down." Documentaries were proposed. Congressional hearings were scheduled. Police K9 programs were granted expanded budgets. But for those closest to the case, only one thing mattered. The child was safe, and the monsters were being hunted. Marcus Halle couldn't sleep, even with Lily safely tucked into her new room. A small pink sanctuary filled with storybooks, stuffed animals, and a security system. The nightmares came. Not hers, his. He kept seeing the face of Alan Briggs. In the courtroom, calm, polished, professional. A man he'd once shared beers with, who had testified as a character witness during the original custody hearing. Briggs had looked Marcus in the eyes and said, "We all want what's best for Lily." Now Marcus knew those words masked the eyes of a predator. Despite the arrests, something gnawed at him, a persistent, heavy feeling in his gut. It wasn't over. The investigation had uncovered 23 perpetrators, spanning 11 states. But every time they caught one, another digital thread emerged. New email aliases, private forums, access keys hidden inside images and audio files. Briggs wasn't the head of the operation, just a cog in the machine. And the machine was still turning. One night, while checking on Lily, Marcus found her sitting up in bed with her teddy bear. "Daddy," she whispered, "why did Mr. Briggs always ask me to smile?" The question broke something inside him. He sat beside her and wrapped her in his arms. "Because he didn't know what love really means," he said softly. "People who hurt others, they lie a lot. But you're safe now." She didn't cry. Instead, she nodded and laid back down. But Marcus didn't sleep that night. Instead, he turned to something he hadn't touched in years, the encrypted flash drive he had once used while serving in the military. Marcus had worked in Army intelligence, specializing in signals analysis and digital forensics. It was a past he'd kept quiet, one Rachel had used against him during their custody battle, claiming it made him paranoid and unstable. Now, that past was exactly what he needed. He started digging, using public leaks, FBI bulletins, and backdoors he knew hadn't been patched in certain forums. Marcus began mapping what he called echo trails, digital footprints left by repeat users across criminal content hubs. Most people left tiny patterns behind, typing styles, folder structures, file naming conventions. Briggs had a signature. All his file folders were dated in military format, YYY.M.DD. Late one night, Marcus found a match, a forum thread hosted on an obscure Eastern European server. User, Midnight Mercy. Folder style. YYY.M.DD. Location tags suggested Washington, D.C., but with occasional logins in Atlanta, and the name J. Halvorsen listed as an uploader alias. He forwarded the findings to Agent Rourke, who responded within 10 minutes. This is legit. We'll open a trace and subpoena the server host. It was the first time the FBI treated Marcus not just as a victim's parent, but as an asset. Days later, the response came. J. Halvorsen wasn't just a username. He was a real man. Jeffrey Halvorsen, a behavioral counselor contracted through the Department of Education. He worked primarily with children recovering from trauma. He had been assigned to Lily's school district. Marcus froze. The man who'd been paid to help his daughter was part of the ring? It was worse than he feared. This wasn't just random evil. It was calculated. The system wasn't failing. It was infiltrated. Rourke issued an immediate warrant. By sunrise, Halvorsen's home was surrounded. Inside, they found dozens of encrypted devices, hidden. Cameras disguised as air purifiers, and folders labeled by initials and years. LH 2024 was among them. Halvorsen didn't go quietly. He tried to destroy the drives as agents broke in. But it was too late. The arrest sparked another cascade. With Halvorsen's files decrypted, the task force linked at least 6 school counselors, 2 private security guards, and 1 youth pastor in Texas to the network. It was national, institutional, and it all went back to the same encrypted core, a master server. Dubbed the Bastion, the server was believed to be located overseas and hosted by anonymous clients for criminal operations. Its forum software was unlike anything agents had seen before, layered in misdirection, designed to erase itself if tampered with. But Marcus had an idea. He offered to help break it. The FBI was skeptical. Civilians weren't normally allowed access, but Rourke advocated for him. Let him in, she said. He's one of us now. With a small, cleared team, Marcus sat in a secure facility with a mission. Crack the Bastion. For 12 straight hours, they ran brute force keys, signature comparisons, and old code exploits Marcus had memorized during his years in service. He noticed something others didn't. A heartbeat ping. Every 30 minutes, the server pinged an American IP for a security certificate renewal. That IP belonged to a nonprofit foundation, a children's charity based in Pennsylvania. It was the final mask. The FBI raided the office. Inside a private server room, they found the relay, a US-based proxy that funneled traffic to the Bastion's overseas host. The foundation's director was arrested, and dozens more indictments followed. The ring was no longer hiding. It was falling apart. Back home, Marcus sat with Lily in the backyard. She drew pictures with chalk, one of a dog wearing a superhero cape. That's Duke, she said, smiling. Marcus smiled too. For the first time in weeks, his fear began to ease. But he knew this wasn't just a victory. It was a war. And thanks to a child's voice, a father's resolve, and a dog's instinct, the war was finally being fought out in the open. The courtroom was full again, not with strangers this time, but with faces that had been changed by the storm. Agents, counselors, advocates, reporters, families, survivors. And in the middle of it all, Lily sat quietly, holding a plush version of Duke the K9. The real Duke sat nearby, calm but alert, his ears twitching at every sound. His handler, Officer Ramirez, stood beside him, not just a protector but now a symbol. The little girl he once guarded was about to do something unthinkable. She was about to testify. It had taken weeks of preparation. Specialists worked with Lily every day to ensure she understood what was happening. They used games, drawings, gentle reenactments, all to prepare her for a single moment, the one where she'd tell the truth in front of strangers. the same way she told it with just 2 words and a finger point weeks earlier. Judge Kessler had cleared the courtroom of non-essential personnel. Only the jury, legal teams, and trauma-approved observers were allowed to remain. Cameras were banned. What was about to happen wasn't for spectacle. It was for justice. The prosecution called her name. Lily Holly, 5 years old, walked to the stand with her plush Duke in one hand and her father's pinky in the other. Marcus kneeled beside her one last time. "You don't have to be brave," he whispered. "Just be honest." "That's stronger than brave." She nodded. Then, guided by a court-appointed child advocate, she climbed into the booster seat on the witness stand. The courtroom waited. "Hi, Lily," the prosecutor said gently. "Do you know why you're here today?" Lily looked at the man and nodded. "To talk about the bad games Mr. Briggs made me play." Gasps rippled in the audience, but the judge remained steady. The prosecutor continued, careful not to press too hard. His job wasn't to expose, it was to confirm. He used picture cards, toys, words Lily had chosen in advance. She spoke about the secret room and the cameras in the animals. She pointed to pictures of Briggs, Halvorsen, and others. But then something unexpected happened. She looked up suddenly and asked, "Is Mr. Briggs still here?" The prosecutor froze. Judge Kessler leaned in. "Do you see him, Lily?" Lily looked around the room carefully. Her eyes scanned the jury box, the audience, even the court sketch artist. Then she pointed, not at Briggs, but at a man sitting 2 rows behind the defense attorney. "A man? In a suit? That's him," she said. "Who?" the prosecutor asked, confused. "He was at the secret house. He gave Mr. Briggs a red box. He said, 'Make sure they're quiet.' I remember." Silence fell like a thunderclap. Court officers immediately detained the man. He resisted, shouting about mistaken identity. But Duke growled low, body tense. It was the same reaction from that first courtroom moment, like déjà vu. Minutes later, the court recessed. The man's ID was verified. He was a paralegal who had worked with a defense firm on multiple prior cases involving children. A low-level assistant, or so they thought. Within hours, his laptop was seized. On it, they found connection logs to Halvorsen's encrypted server. He wasn't just a legal aid. He was an inside man. And Lily had recognized him by voice and face. Back in chambers, Judge Kessler stared in disbelief. This case is no longer about one man. It's about how deep the rot goes. The trial resumed days later. Briggs, now visibly shaken, had stopped smirking. His attorney attempted to file motions for mental instability and character assassination. All were denied. Then came the day of cross-examination. Briggs' attorney approached Lily. He tried being gentle, using soft words and fake smiles. "Lily, is it possible you're confused? That maybe you're thinking of someone else?" Lily hugged her stuffed Duke. "I remember the red lights," she whispered, "the clicky sound the bear made. And Mr. Briggs said not to tell, or he'd take my daddy away." The attorney stammered. The jury stared. And Briggs lowered his head. The defense rested with no further questions. After Lily stepped down from the stand, the courtroom broke into quiet tears. Even seasoned officers had to excuse themselves. It wasn't just the facts that broke them. It was the smallness of her voice, the gravity in her innocence. For the first time, no one doubted the truth. No one doubted Lily. Outside the courthouse, press waited eagerly. But Marcus refused interviews. He held Lily's hand and walked past the cameras. "She's not a headline," he told one reporter. "She's a child." Inside the FBI, Agent Rourke received a call. The database of suspects tied to Briggs, Halvorsen, and the paralegal had grown by 42 names. Judges, coaches, even child psychologists. Every one of them had attended the same private conference on youth development. In 2023, a cover operation, right in the open. The trials would continue for months, maybe years. But Lily's testimony had opened the dam. And now, the flood couldn't be stopped. That night, Lily asked her father, "Will the other kids be okay too?" Marcus knelt beside her bed. "They will now," he said, "because you helped find the monsters hiding in the light." The case against Alan Briggs had opened a gate no one could close. With Lily's testimony, the FBI launched a multi-state investigation codenamed Operation Kindlight, a quiet but aggressive sweep, targeting all connections unearthed through encrypted files, testimony, and digital forensic analysis. What they discovered was staggering. More than 40 individuals were implicated across 5 states. Teachers, nonprofit workers, tech consultants, even a juvenile court liaison, all appeared clean on paper. All had ties, some direct, others circumstantial, to Halvorsens' now dismantled therapy network. But the trail began to link them through encrypted chats, financial transactions, and most chilling, patterns of silence. They didn't just abuse, they protected each other. And the brave testimony of a 5-year-old had cracked it open. Agent Rourke worked around the clock. Sleep came in broken intervals on the cot in his office. Each new arrest brought more data. Each suspect offered deals, some willing to flip for immunity, others hoping to lessen their inevitable prison sentences. The more the FBI dug, the more the shape of the conspiracy emerged. Halvorsen hadn't acted alone. Briggs was his gatekeeper, yes, but he was also his recruiter. The real mastermind was someone higher, someone with influence. The evidence suggested there was a central fund, disguised as a charitable foundation supporting child wellness. It was called the Lantern Trust. Rourke stared at the name on the monitor. Its logo was a child holding a glowing orb, innocent, hopeful. The irony made him sick. Meanwhile, Marcus Halle faced a different kind of storm. Public attention exploded after Lily's closed-door testimony leaked to the media. Journalists painted her as the child hero who shattered a silent empire. Documentary crews requested interviews. Publishers offered book deals. Advocacy groups wanted to name their events after her. Marcus turned down every offer. "She didn't do this for attention," he said. "She did it because she was brave, when the world was wrong." But there was one request he couldn't ignore, an invitation from the president. The Oval Office visit was quiet. No press, no photos. Just Lily, Marcus, the president, and First Lady. Lily sat on the carpet, playing with a puzzle, while the adults spoke about reform, funding, and child protection legislation. The president promised action. For once, the words didn't feel hollow. Back in court, Briggs' trial approached its conclusion. He faced 27 counts, including conspiracy, child exploitation, coercion, and obstruction. His defense team had shrunk. After Lily's testimony and the arrest of the paralegal, even his top attorney withdrew, citing irreconcilable ethical concerns. On the day of final arguments, Duke the K9 was present again, not as evidence, but as honored guest. The jury didn't take long, guilty, on all counts. The judge sentenced Briggs to 9 consecutive life sentences, calling his crimes a violation of innocence so severe, society must be protected from you forever. Cheers erupted outside the courthouse. Survivors embraced. Advocates cried. And Marcus just held his daughter close. But the war wasn't over. Rourke's team had identified the head of the Lantern Trust, Charles Denim, a billionaire philanthropist and tech mogul who had long positioned himself as a children's rights advocate. He funded educational software for schools. He built youth centers, He was a keynote speaker at child psychology conferences, and he was also the final wall protecting the network. They couldn't go public without airtight proof. Denim had the best lawyers in the country and friends in even higher places. But one thing worked in the FBI's favor: greed. One of Denim's close assistants, afraid of going down with the operation, offered a deal. In exchange for protection, he turned over a series of hard drives. Backups Denim thought were erased. What they contained was horrifying. Thousands of hours of recordings, lists, chat logs, money trails, digital fingerprints connecting Denim to Halvorsen, Briggs, and dozens of others. And worst of all, a folder labeled insurance files. Denim kept as blackmail to control the others. Rourke stared at the evidence and said only one word: "We got him." Denim's arrest was swift, executed by federal marshals at his mountain estate in Colorado. The nation erupted. A man who once graced the covers of magazines as a tech messiah was now facing crimes so vile that even his allies abandoned him. As he was escorted into custody, reporters screamed questions. Denim said nothing, but in his eyes there was no remorse, only rage that he'd lost. The fallout was massive. Politicians distanced themselves. Boards resigned. Institutions burned bridges they once celebrated. The nation reckoned with the fact that monsters hadn't hidden in shadows. They'd worn suits, attended galas, and smiled for cameras. But something else happened too. People rose. Donations poured into child advocacy groups. Volunteers lined up for foster support programs. New legislation passed across several states, increasing funding for psychological screening, school protections, and trauma recovery. And at the center of it all was Lily, not the child who broke the case, but the child who gave other children hope. She wasn't a symbol anymore. She was a catalyst. In her kindergarten class, she still colored outside the lines. She still wore sparkly shoes and sometimes forgot to eat the crusts on her sandwiches. But every adult who saw her saw more than a little girl. They saw courage in its purest form. And though she didn't understand it all, Lily once told her father, "The monsters don't like when kids talk." He smiled, held her close, and said, "That's why you made them listen." 2 years had passed since Lily first pointed at Duke in the courtroom and changed everything with 2 small words. The trial of Charles Denim had come and gone. He received the harshest possible sentence under federal law, with prosecutors making it clear. This wasn't just punishment. It's a message. Dozens more were arrested as additional victims came forward. More children like Lily. More survivors who finally believed someone would listen. But for Marcus and Lily, life didn't go back to normal. It moved forward into something new. They relocated to Oregon, seeking peace in a quieter town, near woods where Lily could run and laugh without whispers from neighbors or lingering reporters. Marcus left his job and devoted himself fully to Lily's healing. They built routines: pancakes on Sundays, bedtime stories, weekly therapy sessions. Slowly, Lily's nightmares grew less frequent. Her therapist said her courage would beat her. Anchor for life. Duke the K9, now retired, had become more than a friend. He was family. After the case, he'd been officially adopted by Marcus and certified as Lily's support animal. Where she went, Duke followed. On her first day at her new school, it was Duke who sat beside her as she walked through the gates, her sparkly backpack bouncing with every step. She still had questions. Sometimes at night, she'd ask, "Why did the grown-ups do bad things?" Or, "Will the monsters come back?" Marcus never lied. "They can't touch you anymore," he'd say. "You stopped them. And now, a lot of other people are safe too." And he meant it. One of the most remarkable outcomes of the case wasn't legal. It was cultural. Lily's story had inspired change at every level. States introduced mandatory early childhood abuse detection training. New technology was implemented to flag patterns of grooming or hidden financial trails. But most impactful of all, children were being taught how to speak up safely. A national campaign launched under the name Project Lily. Its mission: empower children to understand their rights and train adults how to listen without fear or doubt. It featured animated videos, books, and programs in over 10,000 schools. The face of the campaign wasn't a celebrity. It was a smiling little girl in a purple dress, holding a stuffed bear and standing beside a German shepherd. Lily didn't know how famous she was, and Marcus wanted to keep it that way for as long as possible. But one moment changed everything. Again, during a school assembly in Portland, a teacher introduced the Project Lily video. When Lily's animated image came on screen, a second-grade boy in the crowd began crying uncontrollably. Teachers rushed over. He whispered something. Authorities were called. By the end of the week, 2 arrests were made. Another predator, living right under the school's nose, had been caught because a child had finally understood he was allowed to speak. Marcus got the call from the principal that night. He cried alone on the porch. The ripple effect of Lily's voice had saved another life. Soon, invitations flooded in again. But this time, Marcus considered them. One in particular stood out: a keynote speech at the National Conference on Child Advocacy. Marcus wasn't a public speaker, but something inside him said it was time, not for fame, but for every child who still feared the dark. On stage, Marcus kept his message simple. My daughter was never meant to be a hero. She was just supposed to be a kid. But when she saw something wrong, she spoke. And the world listened. Not because she was loud, not because she was famous, but because truth is louder than silence. And kids, even the tiniest ones, carry truth better than we do sometimes. The room gave a standing ovation. Afterwards, a woman approached him with tears in her eyes. She was a survivor. She said she'd kept her story buried for 30 years, until she read Lily's, and she was finally ready to tell someone. That was when Marcus truly understood. This wasn't just about stopping bad people. It was about rebuilding trust, restoring the belief that even the most vulnerable had power. Not in silence, but in voice. Back home, Lily turned 7. Her party was small. Cupcakes, a bounce house, a few close friends. Duke wore a party hat. They played hide and seek until sunset, and for a moment, everything felt perfectly normal. Later that night, Marcus tucked Lily in. She clutched her bear and asked, "Daddy, are the monsters all gone?" He thought about it. "Not all of them," he said honestly. "But the ones you faced are?" She nodded. "Will I have to help again?" Marcus paused, touched her forehead gently, and smiled. "You already did, and now the grown-ups are helping too." She closed her eyes. "Good. I'm kinda tired of being a superhero." He laughed. "You've earned the break." Outside, her window, wind rustled the trees. In the corner of the room, Duke stirred but stayed at peace. Marcus sat in the hallway for a while after she fell asleep, just listening to the silence. It no longer felt heavy. It felt whole. Because a child had once looked at a police dog in a courtroom and with 2 small words, shattered an empire of evil. And in its place, she planted something stronger than justice. She planted hope. The end